Ladies and gentlemen, long time no see. We are back and we've got a fantastic card this weekend. UFC touched down in Saudi Arabia for the first time, I believe, in its company's history. And what a banging way to start off 2025 in terms of fight night. Israel Adesanya headlining a fight night in 2025. It's ridiculous. But firstly, Oscar, I'm shooting over to you. How are you?
I'm feeling really good. We have been a little inactive, but we try to do what we can here. And this is exactly what you want to return to. You don't want to return to this mediocre Apex cards. You want to return to a card that was founded by Saudi money, so it's got high quality names left and right. This card, in my opinion, is stronger than the pay per view offering that we have next week, and that has two title fights. So I really am looking forward to breaking this down. And there was a couple of events that we did not have the opportunity to cover, and there's a lot of cover. There's a lot to cover on that front. So I said we get right into it.
Yeah, completely agree. Let's get straight into the action. We'll talk about UFC 311 as you talked about Islam Makhachev versus Honoto Moicano. It was a crazy week in terms of MMA, wasn't it, Oscar? It was meant to be Armand Djorian in the main event. Talk to us through it.
Yeah, so Arman Sarukian has a back issue while he's cutting weight. He does not weigh in. We see Hinato Moicano weigh in at championship weight. And they announced that he's taking Arman's spot, that Arman cannot compete. And Hinato was supposed to fight on the card anyway against Benil Dariush. So he steps up to the title fight. He gets this huge pay raise. But that's all he got that night. He got tapped out very easily with a Darce choke in round one. Islam, he slipped early in the fight, and that was the only time when we had any shred of hope for Moicano for this contest. This was Islam at his best. He now has the record for most successful lightweight title defenses. He's building an all-time resume in the UFC, and this is exactly what his supporters expected of him before he competed for the title. And I got to pat myself on the back here for always believing in Islam Makhachev.
Islam Makhachev had a lot of weight on his shoulders when he started his MMA career. When Habib, rose to fame and did what he did in his career, immediately the people that were behind him, his successors like Islam Makhachev, like Umar, had a lot of weight on their shoulders because they had to fulfill the boots that Habib once left in MMA. It was a lot to fill in. But there is one man that's filling them boots, and that's Islam Makhachev. If you look at the run that he's on at the moment, it's incredible. If we talk about people that are looking to stop him at the moment at lightweight, I really cannot see a challenger. Even Arman, I don't think there's a guy in his way that he will not put away and win that fight. I think Islam Makhachev is fantastic. He's very well rounded. Striking is getting better each fight and looked good in this fight against Honoto Moicano. Submitted Honoto Moicano, who, if you go to the ground with Honoto Moicano, you got to suspect that you're going to be in danger because how good his jiu-jitsu is. Islam Makhachev kind of proved that with ease how good he is.
100%. He keeps on submitting these black belts like they're white belts. It is incredible. And what's next for him? I believe that Islam wants to fight Justin Gaethje next. That's what he said. And Gaethje has a fight with Dan Hooker coming up. If you look at Gaethje's fights, he either has a war or he gets this quick knockout. I think he might get a quick knockout against Hooker. So we could see that fight in October potentially.
If Dan Hooker spoils the party, who knows? Maybe we could see the rematch. But who knows what's going to happen in the lightweight division? It's kind of crazy. I know there's been talks of him moving up to 185 pounds to fight Dricus du Plessis or whoever at Sean Strickland, because obviously he can't move up to 170 pounds because his good friend and training partner Bilal Muhammad is there. It was a good night for Islam Makhachev, but it was an even better night for Marv Davishvili, who was the underdog heading into this fight. A lot of people written him out. I think myself included. I think Umar was, I think Umar had a lot of hype going into it, and I believe that hype, and I think I still do. I think this was a close fight. I think Umar showed a lot of good things in this fight, but what Marab showed better was just his persistence, his pace, his cardio. At 135 pounds, no one can match how quick this guy goes and how consistent he can go out in a round. This guy don't stop. He's like a steam train. He's ridiculous.
Yes, I don't know if I remember the last time a champion's victory in a title fight elevated his stock this much. Marab was a guy that everybody respected. He was on this big winning streak, but for him to beat a man with the last name Nurmagomedov elevated him to such a level, especially to the fact that he was out wrestling the man. He was making him walk backwards. He really made that cardio wane as the fight went on. And Umar, he's who we thought he was. Like we really know that this guy's elite. He won rounds 1 and 2 undisputedly, in my opinion. It was round 3 after he had broken his hand and he was getting a little tired that we saw that he's not ready quite yet. I say you give him 3 to 5 fights and we're looking at your next champion. And who knows, like if he doesn't break his hand, how does this fight go? You also have to give Marab a lot of credit because he was clearly injured. Like we saw his leg, it was in bad shape, and he had a back issue too, apparently. So the excuses should just be thrown away here. All the credit in the world should be given to Marab for putting on that pace and out wrestling a man from Dagestan. You're muted.
That's a good idea. Thanks for telling me. It's just because I quickly had to blow my nose, dealing with a lot of sinus issues. But yes, the pace that Marab can keep at 5 rounds is ridiculous. I remember I saw like an Instagram post after the fight. It was 2 days after the fight. Daniel Cormier went to his house. This man was still running. It was 2 days. You went to be on a victory lap, having a little bit of a not party, but having a little bit of a catch up with friends and celebrating the win. This man's running the block and make sure he's getting his running. I think that's what sets him apart from him and probably the rest of the champions. This guy don't stop. He's ridiculous. He's relentless. And I'd like to see who's next for 135 pounds. I feel like they're going to do that rematch with Sean O'Malley potentially in the summer.
I totally agree with you. I think we actually could see that like in May, honestly, because Marab said he wants to fight 4 times this year. So I feel like maybe Sugar Sean says he's not ready. They could put Peter Yan in that spot. Anything's really on the table here with Marab because he's now in the position where he can start asking for things because his fan base has grown and he's beating everybody. He even beat multiple champions before he got the title. So this man is on a generational run and he might be not far away from being the GOAT at 135 pounds.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's on a fantastic run, as you mentioned. The rest of the card, Jiri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill, was a fantastic fight for as long as it lasted. Jiri Prochazka, I think, showed a lot in this fight, especially the defense and the head movement. You can see he went away after the last fight against Alex Mahera and sort of worked on the defense and moving his head, especially after his punching and staying out of the center line. It was a good Jiri Prochazka. Would I like to see a third fight with Alex Mahera? Absolutely not. Not yet. He still looked good. But I still want to see a few more fights to see if he can maintain that and sort of climb back to back to back and keep that momentum going. Oscar, a few other fights that were on the card that surprised you, and talk about Jiri.
Yeah, for me, that year Prohaska fight, you could have given it fight of the night. Honestly, it was just as good as that title fight. These guys were throwing heat the whole time. Both got hurt in different periods, and we saw that Jamal Hill. Say what you want, he's very tough, and he is an elite light heavyweight. So he got a little respect after the fight. But for a year, Prohaska, he's new and improved. He's using head movement. He actually has defense. Who would have thought it? Who needs defense in a fist fight? And with that tool in his arsenal, he could go a lot farther than we originally thought. And for Jalton Almeida, this guy is a monster. Everybody he fights, he takes them down with ease. He looks like the Brazilian Habib out there. It was only Curtis Blades that was able to stop him. But outside of that, he's taking on guys that are known for mauling people, and he mauls them. So he's terrifying, honestly, and he could be a serious challenge for Tom Aspinall. So look out for Jalton. And René de Ridder, this guy, we had high expectations for him. He had a shaky debut. He goes out there against Kevin Holland, and he treated him like a welterweight. He bullied him and choked him out. That really was a great start to the main card because René de Ridder is here to play.
Yes, see René de Ridder in the UFC. Once upon a time, two weight division champion, one championship, which was, still not an easy feat. He went over there. So he has that big stage championship experience. He's just got to climb the ladder, shall we say, in the UFC octagon and the divisions. Some great fights as well. We had Hani Barcelos versus Palton Talbot, which was an upset for the ages, shall we say. Peyton, fantastic prospect. A lot of people riding the hype, myself included as well. I always thought Hani Barcelos was, top 25, top 20 material. A few years ago, he was on a fantastic winning streak, halted a little bit, but I still feel the talent is, in there with Hani, and I think he showed it on the night. Dominant performance.
Yeah, this was the case of the odds makers in the betting community getting way too high on a guy that was really unproven. Peyton Talbot was a guy I didn't see going that far when I saw him on Contender Series when he had his debut. He didn't look that great. He had a couple of outstanding victories, and that's how people got high on him. He had not fought in a guy that was as good as Hani Barcelos, and we were reminded of that.
Yeah, you can see the rest of the card there. In all honesty, I think that was a great card. 311 was a fantastic way to kick off things in 2025. Do you agree?
I completely agree. Honestly, this would not surprise me if it's a nominee on the event of the year list at the end of the year.
Yeah, completely agree. We followed that up with PFL Road to Dubai. With the Bellator Championship, Lightweight Championship was on the line. Paul Hughes versus Usman Nurmagomedov. The Habib family were they were active within a space of few weeks. They have Umar, Usman, and obviously Islam Makhachev. So that the whole crew was out within a space of few weeks. Usman was defending his belt against Paul Hughes. I don't know whether you watched this fight, Oscar, but it was one of the best fights I've seen in MMA. It was absolutely ridiculous. Back and forth, the scrambles that these men produced, especially Paul Hughes. I feel like heading into this fight, a lot of people were doubting Paul Hughes, and I feel like I was sort of one of them as well. I thought, okay, I know he's good, but let's see how good he is. Usman, I felt like was another feat, another level, and credit to Paul. He went in there and showed what kind of a fighter he is. Went toe to toe with him for 5 rounds, and all honesty, I could have had that a draw or at least going Paul's side. I thought I might be a little bit biased, but I thought Paul nicked it at the end. I really did.
So I really think that this was a draw with the point deduction. That point deduction made it very clear. So a victory for Usman was a little suspect, especially when we're in Dubai. Dubai loves the Nurmagomedovs. So that's a little suspect. And for Paul Hughes, as Irishman, to stand up for Ireland after Habib said that Irish MMA is nowhere near Dagestani MMA, that really had to, that had to burn for Habib when his guy is out there being very competitive in the grappling exchanges and on the feet. So Paul Hughes, the stock went way up. I believe that there's some people that did not know who Paul Hughes was before this fight, and now they know, and now they like him because he was the guy that was more so pushing the action in many stages of the fight. So Paul Hughes, I think, has made a star of himself, and people really want this rematch. So much so that Don Davis, he put out a poll on X asking people if they wanted the rematch. So he's actually considering a rematch.
Who does not want this rematch? And it has to be either in Belfast or Boston for me. I felt like Paul Hughes kind of traveled to a little bit of Usman territory. In Dubai. That's sort of like you know what I mean. They're sort of their territory over there with the Russians and the Muslims, etc. But Paul Hughes went over there to travel in that territory and fight his sort of his garden. I would like to see Usman either fight in Belfast or Boston. I know Boston has a great Irish community, so get behind him.
That would be truly ideal, but who knows? We might see that fight in Saudi Arabia, and we might see a little repeat.
Yeah, let's talk about UFC Saudi Arabia. We've talked about on this podcast a lot about Riyadh season, how they've invested into the boxing side of things. They've put loads of money, millions, probably not earned as much back. You never know, but they're putting lots of money into these guys to fight for sort of their entertainment. They're fighting for the princes, so they can watch basically a private show. This weekend, they've invested into the UFC and Power Slap as well. I don't know whether you watched it last night. There was a Power Slap as well. But Israel Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov in the main events of UFC Saudi Arabia. If you look at Israel Adesanya, I feel like the first thing that immediately comes up to mind is championship fights, because this man has been in, I think, maybe 8 consecutive championship fights. To see him in a fight night main event headliner, it's a bit weird. It's a bit confusing, and I feel like this speaks at the time of his career. You know what we're looking at in his career. I feel like this is a must win if he wants to go back to titles contention straight away. Otherwise, it's going to be a long road back, I think, for him. And I feel like he's the type of guy, sort of, go in there and prove that he put this dedication in. And that's what we're going to see this weekend. Has he been putting in the work in? Is the motivation? Is the hunger still there? Is the desire still there? Oscar, what do you reckon?
Yeah, so for Israel Adesanya, it's actually been 11 straight title fights. It started in 2019 when he fought Kelvin Gastelum for the interim title, and his last fight against Dricus Du Plessis. That was a fight where he won at least one round against the current champion. So he still has elite skills, but we saw on the ground that he's lacking in submission defense and takedown defense. Luckily for him, Nasruddin Imavov is a French kickboxer. Sure, he's known to include takedowns here and there, but that's not exactly his game. And in a 5-round fight, I would believe that Nasruddin Imavov is going to want to retain as much cardio as he can by not wrestling. So I think we're going to look at a kickboxing fight here, a fun one at that. And for Adesanya, now that he's not champion, he doesn't have that same pressure, in my opinion, to like defend the belt. Back then, he was like when he was champion, a lot of people didn't like his fights, me included. The guy would be a straight up counter striker. He was on the outside waiting for opponents to come to him. But if you're hearing the conversation with Adesanya, he's not exactly in this for like money or straight up winning. He's there to fight. He likes to fight. So I believe he's going to be a little more aggressive this time around. And he knows his cardio was lacking in the last fight. So now he's training that cardio more. So we're going to see more output, more aggression from Adesanya. And I always thought that Nasruddin Imavov kind of peaked early on. We saw what he was made of like in these fights with Roman Dolidze. That was a terrible outing, in my opinion. The Sean Strickland fight, terrible outing, where he just slows down later in these fights. And you see these glimpses where he has this self-doubt. And I just don't think he's an elite fighter like Adesanya. I think Adesanya is going to be landing the cleaner strikes, the harder strikes. And if Imavov tries to land those bombs that he landed against Cannonier, I think Adesanya counters him on the way in. So Adesanya, I believe, returns to form and wins a unanimous decision.
Yeah, I completely agree. Adesanya is a superstar inside the UFC. No, there's no doubt about it. He's a superstar. What he's done for the sport, his build up. There was a lot of pressure on him, as we talked about. He was a great deal, beating all the as you can see here. His run was incredible. Kevin Gastelum, Robert Whittaker, Yoel Romero, Vittori, Robert Whittaker, Jaron Cannonier, Alex Pereira, Sean Strickland. Yes, Du Plessis. It was an incredible run, but he's in the worst spot of his career right now. 2 losses in terms of MMA, 2 losses back to back, which was the very, very high stakes. Now he sort of drops down a level and fights Nasruddin Imavov, who obviously, no disrespect, is a fantastic fighter, top 10 material. But if you look at the two that are at play, you've got to go with Adesanya. I think you would stupid be not to. We're going to see either 2 Adesanyas this weekend. One that's going to want to look to bounce back and be, sort of put himself back out there and see, he's still about, he's still the dog, or he's going to go sort of just try and just smooth it, try and cruise to a victory. I think we're going to see Adesanya, as you talked about, be more aggressive and look to put away Imavov. If he could put Nasruddin Imavov away in 2 rounds, you can't tell me that's not a statement.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like Adesanya has the star status where he doesn't have to work that hard to get another shot at the title. So exactly. Anything's possible here. Khamzat Chimaev is next in line, but with his history of pullouts, he could not be next in line, and you can see Adesanya slip into that spot.
Yeah, I like to see Adesanya in this spot. It's a high pressure cooker moment for him. He needs to perform. And I feel like in these moments where his back is up against the wall, like the second fight against Alex Pereira, he delivered. I think we're going to see a big moment from Israel Adesanya this weekend. Another fight in the co-main event, which is absolutely ridiculous for the fans, is Shara Magomed Bullet against Michael Wenham Page, MVP. For me, this is a great stylistic fight. Obviously, Shara loves to strike, loves to use his flashy kicks, and MVP, sort of back in the day was sort of like that. It kind of looked like we're looking at, a younger version of MVP, even though they're, more 7 years apart. But MVP back in the day used to like to throw splashy kicks and throw these creative punches. I feel like what we've seen in the past from MVP sort of tried to be more technical, especially inside the UFC. We haven't seen as much entertainment. I know he beat Kevin Holland, but now coming off the back of the loss against I completely slipped my head. Ian Gary, was it Ian Gary?
Ian Gary, yeah, yes.
Ian Gary, that was a close fight, a very technical fight. Arguably could have got the win that night. He takes on the Shara Bullet, who's 15-0, has looked sort of good at moments inside the UFC. Do you expect him to get another victory against MVP, who clearly is his most experienced opponent today?
Yeah, this is a very tricky fight, if you ask me, because MVP is so unpredictable with his skill set. He's a bit of a counter striker at times, and we could see his speed advantage come into play here because he's 37, but he has the speed of a 26-year-old. So he's really deadly out there. But Shara, I think, has this physicality advantage that's kind of hard to ignore. I think he probably would have a more sting on his punches if he's moving forward. So it's a tricky one for me to pick. Also, you have to factor in that MVP, his grappling is pretty good. When he fought Carlos, he took on Carlos Condit and out grappled him at a tournament, I believe it was. And against Ian Machado Garrett, he won round 3, in my opinion, with that control time. So if things get tricky for him, he could go for a takedown. But I think we're just going to see these guys kickbox out there. And Shara, I think, might land ever so slightly the bigger shots. And we talked about it earlier. The Magomedovs, they get preferential treatment in this part of the world. And a tricky fight like this, I think these judges will give it a Shara more often than not.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I'm looking forward to this fight. I'm really interested to see how it all plays out. But in my opinion, I think MVP gets the job done. I feel like what we've seen from Shara is we've seen moments, we've seen splurts of where he can explode and produce these highlights, especially in his last fight, the spinning back fist, double spinning back fist. But I feel like, I think there's still a lot in the tank for MVP. We saw it against Gary, where it was a tough fight, very competitive, could have got the win that night. But I want to highlight what you just mentioned about MVP is the speed. This guy's ridiculous. He can get to A to B quicker than probably no one in that division, 185 pounds. And I think that, again, will put off Shara Magomed Bullet. I think we're going to see MVP with a knockout in second round, catching him with a clean left or right hand.
Wow, that would be totally shocking, especially since MVP has said he doesn't even want to stick around in this division. He wants to move back down. This is a fight basically just for fun. So if he's doing a fun fight and he goes out there and does that, that would be crazy. And that would probably get him a big fight at 170.
Yeah, I completely agree. A fun fight for the fans, fun fight for everyone involved. I'm looking forward to it. Another one at heavyweight is Sergey Pavlovich versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I think this one for me is quite easy. Sergey Pavlovich, heavily favourite, minus 320. If I look at this and start to think, how is the route to victory for anyone involved? If you look at Rozenstruik, it's a big right hand. He's going to knock him out. If you look at Sergey Pavlovich, he's got that striking, he's got good power, but he's also got that grappling as well. He can sort of mix it up. And if you look at Jairzinho Rozenstruik, the grappling, for me, is not too great. I don't like it. And I think Sergey Pavlovich is going to insert his dominance very, very quick, get the takedown very early on. And I think we see a ground and pound finish in round 1 to the end of it. I think Sergey gets on top and sort of unleash hell. He's in a tough position in his career as well, of 2 back-to-back losses against
Aspinall and Volkov.
Aspinall and Volkov. So he's going to want to go in there and just sort of get the win. Just get the win, get back to winner ways. and just sort of take no damage. I think that's the route to victory for Sergey. I think he takes them down very early on and gets the ground and pound going straight away.
Sergey's really not a guy that goes out there and offensively wrestles. I feel like he's been known to be a brawler. In fact, the only way he has won in the UFC is by first round knockout. That's his only win condition. If he leaves that first round, things get hairy for him. And he also has been knocked out in round one before by Alistair Overeem in his debut and by Tom Aspinall in his title fight. So I feel like he's a guy that is gonna either put a guy to sleep or he's gonna be put to sleep himself, unless he's fighting Volkov. That was a fight where they were teammates. They were very hesitant about the fight. It was weird all around, and I think that's an anomaly. I think anybody else he's fighting, he's gonna go out there and try to kill him. And Jairzinho is very much a killer, but he's a guy that's a lot more methodical, a lot more patient, and that usually bites him in the ass because if you see in many of these fights, he's not pulling the trigger. Against Tai Tuivasa, that was a fight where Tai showed off that chin. But I just think Sergey's going to pull the trigger earlier, and Jairzinho will not be able to eat those shots. He got knocked out really quick by Volkov. The Francis Ngannou fight, he got knocked out quick. I just think Sergey is a more cleaner, aggressive boxer, and that's going to pay dividends. And he puts him to sleep in round one.
Yeah, Sergey's passed on foundation, with Greco-Roman. So if he wants to go back to it in one fight, I think it's not a bad idea, taking him down and sort of being able to unleash the ground and pound. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a great night. Let's talk about the rest of the card. Said Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. Vinicius Oliveira, a few fights ago, unleashing one of the best knockouts I've ever seen in my life with the flying knee over Bernardo Sapaj. He beat Ricky Salon. Sort of a good run right now. He takes on a Nurmagomedov who, a bit interesting. He sort of had his ups, had his down. Lost to Hany Barcelos, lost to Jonathan Martinez. Come back with a win over Gufarov. Can't really pronounce that one in 2023.
Muin Gafarov.
Yeah, Muin Gafarov. That was in 2023, so it's been quite a while. A bit of a layoff for him. He returns against Vinicius Oliveira, who's coming hot. A lot of good momentum, behind him. Oscar, who have you got in this one? Is it a Russian or Brazilian?
Yeah, I got Said here. I believe Said is certainly the better striker here, especially with his kicks. Is going to make a big difference here. Vinicius is the benefactor of pretty solid matchmaking so far. He had Sopai, a kid who was coming in on short notice, inexperienced, very raw. And then he took on Ricky Simon. Ricky Simon used to be damn good. He choked out Merab Dvalishvili back in the day. But in that fight, he had no confidence. He had just nothing to offer in that fight, and he got pieced up. Said is still a guy who's not like Ricky, who's not like Bernardo. He's like right in the middle. He's in his best years, in my opinion, and it's going to show here. Vinicius is pretty big for this division. If you look at him against these guys, he towers over him. He's got a lot of strength. Luckily for Said, he's not going to be trying to take him down or anything. He's going to be on the outside. He's going to outstrike Vinicius for 3 rounds here. I just think that Vinicius is a little I don't think he's like the most advanced striker. He uses his striking to bully guys, if you get what I mean. He tries to just get in their face and beat them up. For Said, he's a lot more technical. And once again, as we said many times, that in this part of the world, if you get a close fight, it's going to go with the guy from Russia.
Yeah, I like this fight. 135 pounds, I talked about earlier, it's stacked. Hany Barcelos could be in the top 20, top 15, a few fights. Vinicius Oliveira, I like him. I think he's long and rangy. I think he's very, very good for the bantamweight division. He can produce these knockouts as we've seen in the past. I'm going with Vinicius. I'm going with the Brazilian. I think he can touch Said Nurmagomedov. I don't think he can knock him out, but I think he can be able to kind of sort of, be able to, use the takedown defense, especially up, and, the battle against the cage is going to be an interesting one. But I like the odds on Vinicius Oliveira. He's a dog. I'd sprinkle a little bit of money on him, 100%.
Yeah, that's a really fun fight here and one of the great matchups on this card. I feel like the winner could be fighting a ranked guy after that.
Absolutely agree. Next on, we've got Faris Ziam versus Mike Davis. Another great one. France, obviously, last time out against Matt Frivola with the fantastic knee up against the cage, absolutely starching Frivola. Mike Davis has sort of been in the UFC for a while now. I think we've seen his face, for a decent amount in front of our TV screens. Last fight, he beat Nathan Levy, and he's on a bit of a win streak as well. He takes the Frenchman, who has more fights than him, but I feel like I've got to pick Mike Davis in this spot. I like him from what I've seen. He's only lost in his 2 losses in his UFC career. Obviously, on the extended series against Sadiq Youssef and against Gilbert Burns. Other than that, he's been pretty consistent, beating Mason Jones, Borishev, Natan Levy. I think he could beat Aziam this weekend. He's 32 years old. I think if it's going to happen, it's got to happen now. He needs that sort of run into the top 15. I think he's a great talent. We just haven't seen sort of enough of him in the last few years.
It really bumps me out that Mike Davis has not been very active. He's had so many injuries. It's unfortunate because when you see him fight, he's got a lot of power in those hands. He's very aggressive, and he does fight finishes. But I just don't like this fight for him against Farezian because Farezian is a guy that actually got cut by the UFC because he wasn't looking that great. And then they go back to Paris. The UFC needs French fighters. They're like, hey, are you available? He says yes. He fights Michael Figlak. He goes out there, out wrestles Figlak. Just looks great. And then he fights Matt Frivola. Matt Frivola is a good grappler. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He out-grappled Matt Frivola in that fight, which was a shocker to many people picking Frivola to out-wrestle him. And in the clinch, he was a straight-up bully. He was using his physicality really well. And then he gets out there and gets a vicious KO. Mike Davis, with him being so inactive, it really makes me wonder if it's ever going to affect him in some of these fights as he fights tougher guys. And I believe Farezian has the ability to defend any takedown attempts here, and it could maybe get some of his own. And on the outside, I feel like his range, he's learning how to use it much better now and stay away from danger here. So I think he can now point him to a decision.
Absolutely. I've got Mike Davis in this spot, so that could be the told you so fight of the week. I'm looking for Mike Davis to get the job done. I think he's got a lot of talent. You've got Faras Ziam. Been an interesting one at lightweight. We've got another one at featherweight. We've got Hamad Naimov versus Khan Offi, the Turkish man, traveling over to Saudi Arabia to take on Mohamed Naimov. This one, fantastic one. Mohamed Naimov, a moderate favorite. The Turkish obviously can't come off the Ultimate Fighter. Naimov has had a few fights inside the UFC. He's 3-1. His last fight coming up against Felipe Lima, where he got choked out in round 3. Other than that, he's been pretty decent inside the UFC. Beat Jamie Malarkey, had that controversial win against Nathaniel Wood, beat Eric Silva. Oscar at 145 pounds, a battle between two people that pretty much got identical records, apart from that, that one no contest on the Turkish side. Who have you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm very confident in Mohamed Naimov here. Mohamed Naimov is a guy I was very hard on early, especially after that Wood fight, where he just cheated left and right shamelessly, and got no consequence as a result of it. But the one thing you can't deny, the guy does have power in those hands. He is very physically strong. He can take you down. And what he did against Jamie Malarkey cannot be ignored. That was huge for him to knock out a lightweight. And this guy's a featherweight. So that was a statement there. Sure, Felipe Lima, much better fighter. But that's Felipe Lima, a guy I see breaking in the top 10 of his division. Khan Ofli, I hate to say it, man, but the modern Ultimate Fighter tournament bracket is not full of the stacked names like we had in season 10 and season 1. These guys are not exactly the UFC's top picks to sign. That's why they put him on the show. And he couldn't even win the show. He got knocked out really brutally to lose the finals. I believe Mohamed Naimov hits even harder. So I think Naimov closes the show early with a knockout blow in round 1.
Yeah, this one for me, I completely agree. I'm going Mohamed Naimov. I might not like the decision against Nathaniel Wood and all the cheating malarkey, but I think he gets this one done against the Frenchman. That wraps up for the main card we're going to go over the prelims where we have a few good fights to talk about as well. We'll have it here. We've got Shamil Giziev versus Khan Offley. Obviously, we've got Hamdi. I'd love to try to pronounce it, the Egyptian against Jamal Pragues. A few good fights. Oscar, which one are you looking forward to? Obviously, we've got Terence McKinney and Damar Hadazovic as well. So that's a pretty good one. It's always good to see Terence McKinney because you never know what sort of fight he can be in.
Yeah, for Terrence McKinney, he's shown that he will never go to the scorecards. He's going to get finished, or he's going to finish the guy in like a minute. So that's going to be an all-action fight. And I believe if Terrence is smart here, he's going to take down Demir and choke him out, just as Renato Moicano was able to do. His submission, the Demir submission defense is horrible. The takedown defense is not good. I'm shocked he's still signed. I couldn't believe it. My eyes when I saw he got a fight booked. I thought he was cut. He hasn't fought in 3 years. That's bad news for Demir. But you never know. Demir does have some pop on those shots, and we've seen Terrence get put out many times.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of times, and definitely sometimes it's been quite alarming. Up against the fence, absolutely slumped. Let's see if Demir has that sort of power to put out the American. We've got Shamil Gaziev as well, returning against Thomas Peterson. Shamil, I think when he came to the UFC, slightly undefeated, and sort of had a few good fights inside the UFC. But following obviously the loss against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, where he kind of quit in the 4th round, beat Dontel Maines, now takes against Thomas Peterson. I feel like these are the sort of people that he will beat in the heavyweight division, but once it gets to the names of top 10, top 15, I think he will lose.
Yeah, I just don't. I'm not very high on Thomas Peterson, and Shamil is actually pretty young for a heavyweight, and he has shown that he can put on a good performance as he did against Martin Budai. So I think Shamil is going to be improved, and he's going to win that fight. But for me, a fight I really think is being overlooked is Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Let me remind everybody that Mayra Bueno Silva competed for a championship in her last fight. Nobody loved that fight whatsoever, but she is a pretty high level fighter that nobody is talking about on this card. I've always been a fan of the fact that she can finish these fights quick with her submissions. And for Jasmine Jasudavicius, I don't think she's encountered somebody with that kind of submission pedigree. And she's so offensive with those takedown attempts. I think she's going to get her neck snatched up in round 2. Mayra Bueno Silva was beating bantamweights with these chokes, and I think she's going to be able to submit Jasmine as a really big underdog and make a statement.
Yeah, I like that fight from Mayra Bueno Silva as well. Obviously, 2-fight loss streak. Last fight against was Macy Charlton, where she lost as well. But interesting to see how this one plays out. Jasmine, a lot of hype. Obviously, good one from herself. She's a moderate favorite, minus 265. And obviously talked about that Raquel Pennington championship fight. Close fight, good fight. Let's see how she turns out this weekend against the Canadian and Jasmine Jasudavicius. We've got Hamdi Abdelhab, who I can't remember seeing him inside the UFC. I know he's made his debut.
So
But I
let me
can't
tell you what happened.
how it
Let me
played
tell
out.
you what happened. So he
Let's
was
go.
he was on the Olympic wrestling team for Egypt. He signs to Jorge Masvidal's bare knuckle promotion. He crushes a couple of cans. He signs with the UFC. He beats Dontel Mays, out wrestles him. He gets caught with steroids, like really bad. He's not a guy who looks like he's on steroids, but apparently he was on all of them. So he got penalized heavy for it, and now he's back. Who knows if he's still on the sauce or not? And he's fighting Jamal Pogues. This is a very weird fight in many ways, but I think Jamal Pogues is a better fighter. Like, you look at the experience gap; it's pretty huge.
Yeah, you talk about Hamdi. Clearly, I literally cannot remember seeing that debut against in 2022. So it's going to be it's a long road back. So obviously, 2025 now, 3 years out of the game. Let's see how he looks. I know there's been a little bit of talk about Bogdan Grad as well, the Austrian, I do believe, coming into, I believe not making his debut, but coming in
I
against
think
Lucas
this is
Alexander.
his debut. I think it is
Oh,
his
thank
debut.
you. If you could, thank you, but yeah, off the
He
back
had
of a
2
split
contender
decision.
series fights.
Yeah, so let's see how that plays out. First one against Tom Nolan where he got knocked out. Second one he won. and now signed to the UFC. Let's see how he talks. I know the UFC Europe obviously makes sense. Obviously fighting out of Austria have been promoting it, so let's see how he gets on against Lucas Alexandra. Is there another fight that you're looking forward to in the prelims? I know there's not, the card in general, not too many fights on this one, 11, which is quite short for a UFC card.
I do like a short card. I like the cards not to overstay their welcome. And this one is nice and early, so this is stress free for all the international viewers. They don't have to stay up at ungodly times, so they can watch it on their own time.
I think it starts at a great time for the UK fans. I think like 9 a.m. I think maybe. So it's fantastic. I love it. This is good, and I think the next few as well are really good for us as well. I know we've got what's the one after this as well?
It's the pay-per-view in Australia, which is normal start time.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Dricus Duplessis, Sean Strickland rematch.
Yeah. So that'll be good. Make sure you catch us next week as well. So as we talk more about that, but Oscar, that pretty much wraps it up. We've got a quick, good early episode. We talked about UFC Saudi Arabia, UFC 311, and obviously that UFC. The PFL, Paul Hughes, Umar Magomedov. And I also like to thoughts on that before we let them all go.
No, nothing really, but I would like to say to everybody that try to be patient with our schedules here, and we will for sure try to see you next week to recap UFC Saudi Arabia and preview UFC 312 Duplessis versus Strickland 2. And once again, thank you to everybody who tuned in, who listened via an audio platform or on YouTube. It means a lot. And yeah, enjoy the fights tomorrow.
Absolutely. Enjoy the fights. UFC Saudi Arabia, a different start time to probably where you are. So make sure you clarify that and look out for that. Oscar, thank you very much. A very goodbye to you all. We'll catch you next week with, as Oscar said, for UFC 312 in Australia. Dricus Duplessis, Sean Strickland rematch going down.